Hello and welcome to the Hash Rugby Chat, coming to you live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Well, that's kind of what we do normally. This week it's going to be slightly different because I have no internet at home, which is really interesting for a guy who's trying to run an internet content business to have no internet. But there you go. So this one's pre-recorded, folks. I will try and be in the live chat.
Rough week for the English.
Rough week for the English. And be in the live chat with you. And we'll hopefully try and get things back to normal next week, hopefully. But we'll see. So this week we obviously will talk a bit about Rugby World Cup because it's now all over. But we'll also cover off on some domestic news, some World Rugby rankings that we always like to cover off on, obviously, and some global rapid rugby news as well.
And a bit of singing.
Are we doing? No, we did. You sung at the post-match game. You've already done the singing.
Oh, please goodness.
Go on then.
No, we'll save it when we get to the final. When we start talking about the final.
We won't talk much about the finals. We did a whole 40 minutes post-match analysis of it. But so what's going on at the moment? We have the Gallagher Premiership is into its third week now, and it is looking crazy competitive this year.
You mean there are English teams that are winning?
There are English teams that are winning and English teams that are losing as well.
Is it?
It'd be amazing, yes.
Is it? I knew that.
No English, no draws though.
This just for the England fans that are watching. I apologise, but this is probably going to be the tenor of the whole
podcast for you.
Yes,
Oh dear.
Yes.
Oh dear. And as I explained to him just before the show, I don't do confrontation. So how am I going to tell him to shut up? Anyway. This year is looking extremely competitive in the Gallagher Premiership. From 7th down to 12th, or the bottom half of the table, is separated by 1 point at the moment. We are only 3 games in. There is still some time to go, but it is very close. It's not just bonus points; it's points difference, and I think it's going to be very close as to which team gets relegated this year.
Now, this raises an interesting question, and I didn't know. You say 7 teams separated by 1 point.
6 teams.
6 teams by 1 point. So if you think about not only are the English players, the England national players out of the competition,
yep,
but so are a host of international players.
Not necessarily. Some of them are already back and playing.
Yeah, but leading up to this position that has got to within 1 point,
yes,
a whole lot of them were removed from the competition.
Yep.
And of course, South African players, the Saracens players and whatever, they've all gone. Which says to you that in the Gallagher Premiership, now I'm not saying I can present a solution here, so this is a little bit like that employee that comes to you as the boss and just gives you the monkey, right, without the solution. But it appears then that your top teams are being defined by who can attract the top-ranked players, a little bit like football, right, where people, you know, the big clubs can play the biggest money, they've got the biggest cash flow, they can get the whoever it may be.
Not really, because in the Gallagher Premiership you have a salary cap.
Oh,
and
you do?
Whilst not all the teams can afford to pay up the salary cap, most of them can.
So well, maybe the issue is the salary cap is too high.
No, I think it's if it was any lower, then they'd lose all their players to France. So it's about the right kind of level, because we say most teams can afford it.
But maybe they would need to have some kind of look. And I don't want to deny any man his income. Mm-hmm. Really, that's not the point. But we're not talking about people being paid a living wage yet. These are very high salaries, right? Not football salaries, but they're still very high salaries compared to us and people who are watching.
Well, but maybe I earn about $100 a month.
There we yes. Yeah. Please give to the Paul Benevolent Fund, right? See below all the links, right? Right. Sorry, just a whole bunch of material opened up, and just close that door. What I was going to say is maybe there needs to be some, sort of alignment. Let's not call it collusion between Japan, France, England, where the salary caps are similar, right? And I know that sounds like non-capitalism, but we're not talking something that's anti-capitalistic or maybe monopolistic. But what we're trying to do is that the game will be better and the game will be more supported. And at the end of the day, you'll draw more people in, you'll draw more spectators, you'll draw where you have parity. And the example that I would put to this is the NFL, which is
Well,
absolute behemoth in world in US sport, but has a hard salary cap. Right? Yep. So just anyway, this is just an idea that I'm mooting out there. We're going to have one of these discussions about structures and stuff.
Well, no, that's good. That's
another time.
No, this one we can touch on for now. But say the top two teams over the last few years have been Exeter and Saracens, and the way they've got there is by having a very good academy system, and so you have very good players who come in at a low salary and young and are good, and then if you have an England player now, they get paid £22,000 per game, so they can top up their salary pretty quickly with international games. So if you've got players like, for example, Jack Nowell, Luke Cowan-Dickey, who both went to kindergarten together,
wow, and
are now playing professional rugby together in the England setup and also for Exeter Chiefs, you're earning decent money. Why would you ever leave? Yeah. So if you get that academy right, if you get the players really bought into the team and being part of the club, then that's where your success comes from. That's where Saracens and Exeter have managed to get their academy so much better than the rest, and that's why they've been at the top of the pile.
And let's be honest, that's what one of the things that drives Canterbury and the Crusaders' success.
Yep, is
the development of players from the junior ranks is so good, and it's so good, in fact, that many young professionals choose to go there to be part of that system. You know, like Jack Goodhue, etc.
Now there are various. It also means that money that you don't spend on players, you can improve other areas. So one of the problems in France is generally they spend all the money on the players and they don't spend very much on improving things like fitness and conditioning and training and all this sort of stuff. Whereas in the Premiership, because you can only spend so much on players, you find that they've spent money in other ways. So, for example, Exeter Chiefs have bought themselves a zero-gravity running machine. So players who are coming back from leg injuries can train earlier.
Oh, they can get the cardio up without putting strain on whatever joint is.
So there are a whole bunch of things like that the Premiership...
Is that for the players who don't know how to swim? Sorry. Again, a whole bunch of material opens up, which we will close. Keep moving forward.
So you do have... So, I mean, it does mean having this salary cap that you've got... another one, Saracens work with Ernst & Young around the analysis and analytics of how teams play and things. So there's a lot of money spent outside that salary cap for those that can afford it, and those that can't, well, obviously, they're not so much. As we're talking about salary caps, we should touch on something that is rumoured to be coming out over the next day or so, or it may have come out and I've not noticed it overnight. But the Saracens got investigated for alleged breaches of the salary cap. Now, the salary cap is a nice thick document. It's not simple. One of the things that clubs are allowed to do is outside the salary cap, is to invest in businesses and training and ventures for the players post their rugby career. Okay.
So, I did not know that, but you just say that, and that just opens a whole can of...
It does certainly, but look, these players have got very short careers. An injury can stop it dead short. They need another job after they leave.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm not saying that's not good that the club does that, but I'm saying if you make that possible in a salary cap environment, to police that in a way,
So anyway. This is where it comes fun. So, so things like Wolfpack beer, Wolfpack lager, which is a sort of craft brewery by a couple of the Saracens players, was partially funded by the organisation to help them, or by the owner of Saracens to help them get it going. That kind of thing is good and is fine. What's a little bit more dicey is one of the things you're not allowed to do is basically buy a player a house or rent them a house. But what if you were to set them up with a 50-50 venture in a house investment company, for example, and the player just happens to live in that house? This is a grey area that, from my understanding, there were reports on and people talking about maybe, allegedly, happening at Saracens. So keep your eyes out for that over the next few days. Saracens could get docked as many as 20 points for this, as well as some serious cash penalties.
Well, I can tell you what is sort of the common thought over the last 20 odd years about players that go overseas, starting way back, going back to sort of 96, 97 when Francois Pienaar went to Saracens, right? And probably was the largest single figurehead of all of this movement to the Northern Hemisphere. And the common view is that when you go there, you earn, of course, especially for South Africans, something like 7 or 8 times more than you would in South Africa. But besides that, all your costs are covered. Right? So they'll get your house, they'll organize your car, they organize your wife a car, sort out your kids in kindergarten or daycare or whatever it was. And so basically your income after tax is mahala when it comes to costs, right? So you can bank that away, come back to your country, whether it's New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, whatever it may be, Fiji, with a large nest egg that you can then launch into the rest of your life. So that's the kind of picture. So it doesn't surprise me, because if you are earning 8 times your salary in South Africa, but the cost of living in London is 4 times what it is in South Africa, then then the parity, then the attractiveness decreases. The same with France, etc. So in order to be able to deal with that, and this may be indeed how many players one of the reasons why many players wind up in Japan, besides the fact that obviously the load on the body is not as heavy as it is in Europe when playing France or the UK. But the other thing is, I think it's pretty much sorted that when you go to Japan and you're playing for the Japanese teams, they put you up.
Oh, Japan's a totally different setup. They don't.
Yes, but they don't have the same hard cap issues. Yeah. And that also makes it sense, because you probably find if you're playing in Tokyo, for instance, the cost of living there is probably even higher than London. So especially when it comes to space and rentals and stuff like that. So they sort you out. And support is, of course, very important, because very few people speak Japanese that when they arrive there from overseas countries. Some people might speak French, but anyway. So that doesn't surprise me at all to hear.
But houses and cars, were brought under the Surrey cap after, I think it was 4 years ago now. There was a bit of an issue. And so that all got brought under the Surrey cap and clearly documented. The other one that used to happen quite a long time ago was the wife would be a cleaner at the club or an admin assistant who would, if you actually looked,
of course she was.
If you looked at her hourly rate, it would be very high, because she didn't have to turn up and do any work really. So so there were some there used to be.
It's important that she gets out the house.
Well, it is.
Yes,
now, be clear. This is this is a used to. It does not happen now. If it did, it would be.
It's a Paul disclaimer.
But that allegedly, there were a number of clubs that would do that. Anyway, so that's our salary cap chat.
Where there's money, hey, just
and where people
this happened in amateurism, eh? When the game was amateur, it was under the table and jobs for buddies and even the South African army, because white boys used to have to go to army for 2 years in the bad older apartheid days, and if somebody was a really good rugby player and they wanted him to play for, I don't know, Northern Transvaal, what's the Blue Bulls now, then he'd be called up to the army for his 2-year stint, and they'd get him posted in Pretoria, so that he could play for the Bulls, right? And then he wouldn't have duties. He could go to he was free to train as much as he liked. He was given passes to get off out of the camp and whatever it is. So this has been going on for a long time. It's a thorny issue.
It is, and it's when you got things like Bill Beaumont getting thrown out of the rugby union for writing a book about. This was after he retired. He wrote a book and earned money, his memoirs of his time playing, and that was considered earning money, and therefore he was thrown
after he retired,
and therefore he was thrown out of the RFU and wasn't allowed any kind of leadership positions until their professionalism came back.
Can I quote Will Carling?
Go on then.
A bunch of old farts.
Yes, exactly. So There were definitely different levels of amateurism and amateurism around the world at one point.
Yeah.
Pro 14 then is also going on, and pretty much as usual, we have Irish dominance in this competition. So Leinster and Ulster top one conference, and Munster and is it Leinster and Ulster or Leinster and Connacht? Anyway, I can't remember which round it is. Anyway, the top two teams in both conferences are Irish.
Listen to this Englishman. All the Irish are the same.
No, oh Jesus. Anyway,
just say that they all talk the same. So.
No, they do not all talk the same.
Well, I suppose the ones from the north. The ones from the north. I'm from Belfast.
Enough. Jeez, hello. So Ulster.
I'm just quoting him.
Leinster, Munster, Ulster, and Connacht are in the top two places in both conferences. You've then also got the other four teams that are kind of that will be in this will be the Cheetahs, Saracens, Glasgow, and Edinburgh, to a greater or lesser degree, and then the other ones, in all honesty, they're already out of
My housemate.
Yeah. I'll try this. Don't try not to
disturb people. Multitask. He's like, whoops.
So there we go. We've got that. That's Pro 14s going on. Top 14s had a couple of weeks off, and they're back again this weekend as well in France. So really it's a warm-up because next weekend we have the European Champions Cup. So kicking off. So there we go. That's what's going on over in Europe. Global Rapid Rugby. Do you know anything about the Global Rapid Rugby?
I hear about it every week.
You do? Okay. That's a no then. So
no, I do. I do know about Global Rugby. I've got a mate who tells me about it every week.
Get me. So Global Rapid Rugby is Twiggy Forrester's competition to keep the Western Force alive, essentially. And what's been kind of the interesting that's come up recently, or we heard a few weeks ago, there was rumours of Bay of Plenty being involved. But I listened to a podcast, and the Bay of Plenty CEO or manager or whatever it's called has confirmed that they are in talks with Global Rapid Rugby, which is kind of interesting that a New Zealand province would be.
Wow.
And the reason for this basically is that they're looking at basically to try and control their environment. Look, you've got Major League Rugby coming up, which is taking players. You've got Global Rapid Rugby. You've got all these other things. And they're like, well, look, either we can let the world change us, or we can be part of that change.
Now, it's really interesting because where does the New Zealand Union, what's it, the NZRU, right? Is it NZRFU?
NZR.
Sorry, I didn't mean that. I wasn't referring to you.
NZR.
New Zealand Rugby. New Zealand Rugby, okay. How are they feeling about one of their unions, their sub-unions, negotiating with an external body?
Well, there was talk at one point of North Harbour being part of Global Rapid Rugby 2 years ago.
Right.
So, and New Zealand Rugby didn't seem to have any objections at that point. So, so I don't think there's going to be any problems from that point of view.
So, when is the Global Rapid Rugby? When is that played? What is the current window?
There isn't a current window because they didn't actually, because he keeps promising it's going to happen and it doesn't, and they end up having these exhibition games. But essentially, it's going to be the Super Rugby window. So it's going to run at the same time as Super Rugby. So
now that makes sense because that means you can the non-Super Rugby players, the ones that form the bulk of your squads in the Mitre 10 Cup, can then have another source of income for the other half of the year.
But not only the players.
Yes, the coaches and the.
So one of the problems that Mitre 10 Cup provinces have is that they have a 12-week competition. So basically, they have a competition that lasts 3 months. Maybe give yourself 2 or 3 weeks for pre-season. So you've got about a 3 to 4 month window where people get paid.
Yeah.
And then for 2/3 of the year, they don't have a job. So how do you run a professional sports organisation where you're only actually active for 1/3 of the year? That's the challenge that the Mitre 10 Cup Mitre 10 provinces have at the moment. So quite often a lot of the coaches and people go off and do are either assistant coaches with Super Rugby, which means they can't concentrate on Mitre 10 development, or they are rugby development officers, or these sort of things.
Now, just think about that for a second. For those who are listening, is that in the let's call it 4 months, right? Because you have 12 weeks and 3 to 4 weeks of pre-season.
Yep.
So if you think about that, to reach the levels of the playing levels that are expected requires a large amount of work.
Mm-hmm.
It requires practices probably twice a day. When I say practices, I mean you probably have a field session and a gym session or a video session, a planning session, a strategy, whatever. To hold down a job for during that time, and remember also they're traveling, they sometimes have matches twice a week, right? They do actually have matches.
Not anymore.
Not anymore, okay. So they have matches, there's travel, there's all of this. So for that 4 months, holding down a job is very difficult, right?
Essentially not.
It's almost impossible to hold down, especially a well-paid job, right? and now you are trying to, you 4 months of the year you're not working,
Mm-hmm.
right? What boss, if you wanted to get a job and a decently paid job and you've got a family, you're a coach, or whatever, and now you're going to say to him, look, I'll work for you, but I'll only be available for 8 months.
And during that 8 months, I'm going to be playing club rugby as well. So I still need evenings off to go training twice a week. And obviously I'll be playing at weekends. So if you're running a meat factory and you're expecting me to do shifts or do any shift work, no, sorry, I can't work weekends.
Because I've got to sleep, because I've got to recover.
And all this sort of stuff. So that's why you'll find that Mitre 10 Cup has got a relatively young squad, is because students can do it.
Mm.
They can get away with it, and people who like apprentices and that kind of stuff. But as soon as you actually need to get, if you don't make it into Super Rugby by sort of 23, 24, basically you're going to have to give up Mitre 10 Cup and just play amateur, because you've got to build a career. So that's why we have these young.
And I've suddenly realised South Africa gets around this problem because they have what they call the Vodacom Cup, right? And the Vodacom Cup is like a sub Curry Cup competition. So the Curry Cup is being played Mitre 10 Cup time, and during Super Rugby they play the Vodacom Cup.
Not this year.
Not this coming year.
No. It was called the Super Sport Challenge this year.
Yeah, whatever. It's a sub competition, so it is a level down from Curry Cup.
Yep.
Right. And the bulk of those players, and it also has a benefit because they're playing. If they need players in the Super Rugby teams, they can step up, and they there's some synergy between the unions and the Super Rugby franchises. So
basically, what Bay of Plenty are seeing here is here's an opportunity that their non-Super Rugby players can be professional rugby players for 12 months of the year. Their coach can be professional all year. He doesn't have to find something else to do because he is the head coach of the Maori All Blacks, so that's another month's worth of work. But he's still only got 5 months worth of work a year. So you'll see that's basically why they're doing it. Is they want to be able to try and provide 12 months of professional rugby for their Mitre 10 Cup players, coaches, physios, etc. So no announcements as yet, but they are definitely talking. He has confirmed they are talking. It would be really interesting. Personally, North Harbour makes a lot of sense to me, right? Because it's near Auckland Airport, whereas Bay of Plenty, where they switch between Rotorua and Tauranga, flying in and out, the logistics of it is so much harder than either a Counties Manukau or a North Harbour.
And that's for the visiting team as well as the home team, yeah.
So that's why I thought North Harbour was perfect for it. Also, it's the biggest market for Twiggy. There's 1 million people live, or a quarter of the New Zealand population live in Greater Auckland, which includes obviously North Harbour and Counties Manukau. So to me, those two would get you in the biggest market in New Zealand and would have good transport links. So, but perhaps they're not as forward-thinking as Bay of Plenty are.
And the major invasion point for the South Africans is the North Shore. So
it is.
Yeah, it's a primary beachhead for the
South African expats. Exactly. Some of the stuff that the
Utah Beach.
Some of the stuff that Bay of Plenty,
Omaha.
Bay of Plenty have done for this year, for example, is that they took a team up to the Hong Kong Tens along with Samurai, their shirt sponsor. So the Hong Kong Tens happens in the week before the Hong Kong Sevens. So again, another opportunity for their for their non-super players to get overseas, to get some playing time. They're also working with Cobra Club in Malaysia, and some of their players are over there at the moment playing in Tens tournaments as well. So Bay of Plenty do look to be one of the more forward, more progressive provinces in New Zealand. One of their problems is they are a regional province. They just don't have the population and the money that an Auckland does, or a Wellington, or even or a Waikato. These clubs have got sponsors and can effectively afford to do stuff. The smaller ones, like your Bay of Plenties, your Hawke's Bays, your Southlands, especially Southlands, really poor, do struggle with their finances.
It does, though. There is something very romantic, very attractive about the idea of them being involved in this kind of competition. Having gone to matches in both Tauranga and Rotorua with you for the Mitre 10 Cup, and been part of some of your coverage there, and I hadn't attended games at either of those venues. There is something special there, right? There is a sense of community and family, whānau as it would be called in New Zealand. There is something special there, and if you could find a revenue stream that would allow that to continue to grow, and develop, there is something very attractive about being able to take a team from Perth or wherever it may be to Rotorua.
So places like Perth, Hong Kong, Singapore, Fiji. They've talked about having a couple of Japanese teams in there. There's talk of Hawaii. All really interesting stuff. So I'll keep you up to date as and when I hear stuff. But really interested in what's going on there.
There's a strong rugby league within Hawaii, by the way. I've got a mate who is a pastor in Hawaii who's from Fiji.
Okay.
And his team just won their league. There's a lot of Islanders, Fijians, Samoans, etc., that live in Hawaii that are passionate rugby fans.
There you go. I'll be not an area I know much about, to be honest. Rugby there. Any sort of player news over the last week that you spotted? I've not really got anything on the agenda for that.
Well, of course, the player news has been dominated by.
We'll get on to World Rugby Awards later if that's where you're going.
Okay, so I'll leave that bit out. But just generally, just updates of more sort of historical background and the backstories of some of these South African players. So that's been very much in the news about primarily led by the story of Siya Kolisi and his background. Those of you who don't know, comes from a very underprivileged background. And when he arrived at the boarding establishment of the boys' school where he was offered a scholarship, a prestigious government school, not a private school, but a prestigious rugby school in Port Elizabeth, and he was offered a scholarship there, and he arrived there and he saw his bed. It was the first time at age 13 that he'd ever had his own bed. And when he opened the cupboard and saw, he said that wasn't the best thing. He was opening the cupboard and seeing a box of socks because he'd never owned a box of socks before. He'd never owned a pair of socks before. Right? And so for him to traverse that journey from that underprivileged background through to being the captain that lifts the World Cup is a tremendous story of hope and inspiration, right? And as in all these sports that we talk about, whether it be football and kids from a poor background looking at Ronaldo and knowing where he came from, or whether it's looking at Siya Kolisi, for kids to be able to look at that and have an aspirational role model.
Yep.
Right? And he certainly has proven himself to be not only a very good rugby player, not only a beloved leader among his own players, who has generated that exponential effect, multiplicative effect, where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts when you have the right leader. We saw that with Richie McCaw. I mean, was it Graham Henry who said that, or it might have been Hansen who said that when Richie McCaw was on the field, everybody played sort of 2% better than when he was off the field.
Yep.
So not only has Kolisi shown to be a very good rugby player, we saw massive impact in some of these knockout games where, he would make a tackle. There'd be three opposition players involved in holding him back. Not only a good leader, but he's also shown himself to be a magnificent man, right? When it comes
a fantastic speaker,
yes.
Post
and every okay. Well, I like your your qualification of that. That's good, because we can. I think it's important that we recognize. It's a good point. We recognize somebody can be a fantastic speaker. Doesn't mean that they're a great person, right?
Yeah,
you're right.
But
It
I
can
guess
happen.
what we've seen is he's managed to put you're coming off a rugby pitch. You're physically drained. Now, admittedly, he's been sat on the bench for the last 20 minutes, but you're tired. You're physically drained, and to be able to structure and put together the kind of speeches he has done has been fantastic.
And you can see, but what you can see is somebody who has done some public speaking and has been involved in that sort of area, is that you can see that what's coming out of him is not the polished, rehearsed patter. You can see that it's coming from a genuine place.
Yep.
That there's really heartfelt emotions, right? And by all accounts, the players that know him, people who have known him for many years and have walked with him, are extremely moved by his life and his story and the man that he is. And they're a great example of that, and you can find this online. There's clips of this of Brian Habana talking about how moved he is and being very emotional about Siya Kolisi's journey, because Brian Habana is quite open about the fact that he was quite privileged in his background. He was very middle class, comfortably off family, and had a completely different upbringing. So so there's those backstories that have happened with the South African Makazola Mapimpi, also very, very poor background, right? And took quite a few years to be discovered at that sort of higher level. So you're seeing a player who's having massive impact, but he's 29, which is much later than you normally see.
Now Kolisi came through which province?
The Stormers came through Western Province and the Stormers.
Right, so which one of the top bigger provinces,
yes.
Whereas Mapimpi came through Border Bulldogs,
yes.
which is a lower province. You get less exposure. It's harder
much less.
Harder to get, but yes.
You know, you wouldn't even call it a Taranaki. You might call it I don't even know if you would call it Manawatu. You might call it like the Southland of the South African unions, right? I'm sorry, all the Southland fans, but just, one of the poorest, when I say income sort of unions, and he sort of labored in that competition, didn't get recognized, eventually got into the Kings, got some exposure there. When the Kings got booted, I think he got taken by Free State, and then, as often happens with Free State players, the Sharks took him, right? They saw the talent there. And just, by the way...
Okay, so the Free State's cheaters, right?
Yeah.
An awful lot of them also go to the Bulls as well.
Yes, let's be fair. That's the reason. This is a long story that cheater fans and Free State fans grind their teeth going all the way back to Andre Joubert, right, in the 90s. But the point that I just want to make here, and I know this is a can of worms, but this is important to say, is that one of the reasons why Mapimpi made his way through these ranks, even though it took long, right, was because there was a requirement for black players to be in various teams, right? And without that requirement, I have very little confidence that he would have been playing in that World Cup final, right? So and not just him, I'm talking about a number of players. I have very little confidence that Siya Kolisi would have made his way through the ranks coming from where he was. But because black players are required, Grey PE, Grey High School in PE, the boys' school, was looking for players because their union needs players. And so that this filters all the way through, right? And he was given opportunities and allowed to grow and then recruited further because the Stormers province need non-white players. They would go looking in the Eastern Cape, which is not their feeder union, right? So a number of these players are there because transformation was required, right? The sad thing, and this is the indictment on South African rugby, is this should have been taking place 20 years ago, and none of this would have been an issue when it comes to selections. And this should have been in place 20 years ago on the provincial unions and the Super Rugby franchises.
So just so we're clear, what you're basically saying, it should have happened earlier, and it's a good thing that was in place. Otherwise, we would not have seen these players
we would not
get
have
picked
seen
at this level on merit. We're not. Let's be clear here. We're not saying that Khaleesi
No.
isn't there on merit. Just want to,
We're not saying any of these players. I was absolutely thrilled in that semi-final. Okay, Cheslin Colby was injured, right? But we saw Spoon Causey come in. Now, remember, Spoon Causey has played 10 tests, has 11 tries.
Yep.
Right? So that's gold dust, right? So in that semi-final, there were 6 black African players starting a World Cup semi-final completely on merit.
Yep.
Right?
And that wouldn't have happened if they didn't get the extra opportunities earlier, which is
developed. Right. So it should have happened 20 years ago, and it should have been imposed on the provincial unions, but they, of course, control South African rugby, and they would prefer to transfer that pressure onto the Springbok coach and not onto their unions, where maybe their income might be affected. Right.
Okay. So we're not going into a deep dive of South African rugby politics.
No, not a deep. It's not meant that way. It's just meant to be a celebration of giving people opportunities, and look what happens.
Now, deep dive into World Rugby rankings. Congratulations, South Africa! You are number 1 in the world. And let's be honest, the rankings, you get double points during the Rugby World Cup. So pretty much always I think once maybe not, but generally always the team that wins Rugby World Cup will become number 1. It's designed that way as well. So congratulations.
And it's appropriate.
And it's appropriate.
It's appropriate. Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, South Africa has lost 1 match this year.
They went through. Yeah, true. Right. Yeah, because they won all the games at the Rugby Championship, right?
Yeah, they're 1 draw.
1 draw. That's right.
In New Zealand.
In New Zealand. That's right. Yep.
Which is, drawing with New Zealand in New Zealand is a major.
Yes, it's an achievement. Yep.
It's an achievement, and 1 loss.
Yep.
And listening to Faf de Klerk's analysis of that loss, he said he spent quite a bit of time sitting with the managements, looking at and analysing that game, and what they realised was there was a 7-minute period where they let it slip, and the All Blacks scored 2 tries. And if you took that 7-minute period out, the rest of the game, they had actually done really well. And so they focused on how can we make sure that we don't make that 7-minute loss. Now, that doesn't, that 7-minute loss of concentration and when I say this, the All Blacks were the better team on the day, because that 7 minutes is part of the AT, right? And
you've still got to take, even if a team does switch off for a while, you've got to take advantage of that.
Yes, and I mean, this is a great strength of the All Blacks, is that they strike like a cobra. If you drop your standards or you make a mistake, they're there, right? But the distance between the 2 teams was quite close when they looked at the analysis, barring the 7 minutes. So they were focusing from then on trying to prevent that from happening, right? So overall, if you think of the performance of the team,
at the end of the day, it's not rocket science. Play the full 80.
Play the full 80. Yes,
get your basics right. But yeah, absolutely, they deserve to be number 1. New Zealand are now number 2, and England have dropped from 1st to 3rd. Obviously, the rest of the top 10 is the same, as no one else has played. But that's minor.
And to be honest with you, and I know the England fans will be a bit upset by this, but overall, right, home and away, if you played 10 times, currently you would expect New Zealand to win more than England would.
Yeah.
Right, at the moment. And I wouldn't say that home and away, playing equally, that England is yet a better team than New Zealand. That doesn't say they might not be on the way, that they've made massive strides. But I think the next clash between New Zealand and England is going to be pretty epic.
Yes.
Right.
When in 20 years' time, when they actually get around to playing it, when the 2 unions stop arguing about how much money they're going to get from each game. And yeah, it's the fact that England sort of seems to play South Africa something like 6 times in the last since the last Rugby World Cup, and have played New Zealand once. That kind of stuff needs to be sorted out. But we'll talk about World Rugby structures in another show.
It doesn't do England any favours in preparing them for World Cups.
No.
Right.
So that's the rankings. Big ups to Luxembourg, because Luxembourg have climbed to 56th from 61st, in the world. They're the biggest climbers this week. 5 places.
Did they play?
Yes, they have to play to move. Yes.
Okay. No, well, that's not a given. There's been times where
but you don't
teams have moved without playing.
Oh, yeah, but you don't move 5 places. That would mean the other 5 teams have played and all lost.
Okay.
So
good on you, Luxembourg.
Good on you, Luxembourg. And Sweden, really, what are you doing? You've dropped from 47th to 53rd. So probably the team that Luxembourg beat, I guess.
Probably.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Don't track all those games. But yes, there you go. So just keep you up to date on those big moves in the world rankings. Mickey Mouse moment of the week, and I guess we can get on to the Rugby World Cup final. But for me, Ben Young's throwing the ball out on the full when trying to pass to a player. That was we haven't really had that much Mickey Mouse stuff happen in those last 2 games, but to me that was perhaps one of the. I was digging around trying to think of one to come up with.
Look, I understand the England players taking off their medals, right? I get that. Deep disappointment, feeling like maybe there's a sense of I don't deserve to be walking around with a silver medal on because we didn't front up or we didn't deliver.
I don't think it's a matter of desire. I think it's a matter of these. Remember, rugby players are hyper competitive people.
Yes, yeah,
right?
I get that.
What they're wearing is a symbol that they failed at what they were trying to get.
Yes.
And that's why I think I don't think it's a kind of like I don't deserve this.
No.
It's a kind of like a.
But this doesn't sit well with me. I get that, but I do think it was a Mickey Mouse move to say, please don't put that on me, and on international. This is the ceremony. It's not respectful of the organization and the whole thing and everybody. Let Bill Beaumont put the thing on you, walk away, take the thing off if it just doesn't sit well with you. But to just say no, don't just give me that, walk away. It's lacking grace, right?
Okay, that one I can understand. The people.
That's what I wasn't going to dish them for taking it off, right?
The people who have been having a go at them for taking it off. Sorry, folks.
No, I don't.
That's
their prerogative.
Yeah.
That's their prerogative. They're now out of the camera shots. They're out of the medal ceremony. What they do with their medal, if a South African had wanted to take it off and give it to somebody in the crowd like Sonny Bill Williams, it's theirs, right?
Yep.
But the receiving of it, to not allow, and grumpy guts away.
I think there are only 2 players that did that, but yeah.
Yeah, that's Mickey Mouse.
Yep.
That's very average, as the New Zealanders would say. Yeah.
Okay then. England 12, South Africa 32. Sing. If you must.
Whaley, whaley, well. Oh, our team got pumped. We lost so bad. The Boks were so glorious and so very victorious. 4 more years to reign over us. Whaley, whaley, whale.
And there we have a humble winner.
I have sung all the way through, right?
Yes.
I mean, I would have sung a sad Nkosi Sikelele if it had been a loss. I would have kept with it. I'm just fortunate that.
Just so you're aware, we've got the finals to deal with. We've got the awards to deal with. We have like 10 minutes, so we need to speed with the actual amount of time we spend on the game because we spent 40 minutes talking about the post-match analysis. You can go watch that video. We'll just keep it brief on the game because
put a link for the people below.
Yep. Right? Link below for that. But in some ways, perhaps one of my moments of the Rugby World Cup came after the game. Did you see Garcés getting lifted up by his 2 assistants?
No,
they were holding him up. One each got a boot, and he's standing up there in the tunnel. He's at the top there so that he could kiss his wife.
Awesome. That's brilliant.
The assistant referees are there to assist the referee to kiss his wife.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I loved Garcés. I mean, one of the things that made the English players who wouldn't allow themselves to be put it on, made them really look a bit classless, was the fact that Garcés got his medal and kissed it. Right?
Yep.
And at that moment, it just really struck me, we castigate the referees and when they really botch something up and, we give them stick. but they're human beings, and you just got a sense of how much it means to them to be part of a World Cup, right? And to referee a World Cup final. And in all probability, if Nigel Owens hadn't pulled his calf, Garces would not have got that game.
Or if England hadn't made the World Cup final, because then you'd probably see Barnes would have possibly been there. Wayne Barnes.
Yes. So, Wayne Barnes would have been there. So you could see just how much it meant to him. And to his credit, he had a game where he didn't look. I'm sorry, but he had a game where he didn't determine the outcome.
True,
right? And really, I think that is the first match that South Africa has ever played with Garces that the Springboks have won, right? So the Springbok fans were exceedingly worried about what would be the outcome of that game, but the more dominant team won, right?
Yep.
So and we didn't have a whole lot of focus on the ref, and that's kind of what we're looking for,
But he didn't have a great game.
I'm not saying he had a great game. I'm just saying he had a game where he didn't determine the outcome, right? Which is like the number one thing that we were holding thumbs for when he was announced, right? I know that's damning with faint praise, but yeah.
Dear. So that was a nice moment. And
he missed some things. I mean, there were at least one thing that comes to mind is where Itoje should have won a penalty by contesting for the ball on the ground early on in the game. It's at least one that I can think of that he missed.
We had a discussion with your friend here who used to play an age grade provincial rugby as a prop. What happened in that scrum? And he's like, I don't know what they did wrong. I think it should have gone the other way. But so there were moments.
But he was penalising the weaker scrum, and it was clear that overall, barring one tremendous scrum by England,
overall,
the strongest and dominant scrum was.
He didn't impact it. And it was the scrum that basically gave South Africa the lead at half time. England couldn't breach the South African defence. South Africa couldn't. South Africa manhandled them well. South Africa couldn't engineer a try either. But the boot of Henri Pollard gave them a 6-12 lead. Two of those kicks were from scrum penalties. It was the scrum that dominant scrum that really helped them there. Also, one of the things we mentioned before the game that's important: England do well when they score early. England score early when you give them a line out in your half to build a platform off, because Eddie Jones has told them the 7 plays they're going to play that's going to score that try. Okay? Mm-hmm. The way you stop that is you win the toss and you kick it to them, so they don't get that line out in your half. And they won the toss. They did the right thing.
Now I think,
took control of the game.
I saw a piece, very interesting piece, where Swayze de Bruin in the studio back in South Africa. So he's a former assistant coach, and he's resigned from that position with the Springboks due to stress-related reasons. And he analysed that ceremony where they toss the coin and the positive body language from Siya Kolisi versus Owen Farrell. You can find this; it's very interesting, right? But it appears to me, having not seen that toss, that England actually won the toss and chose to receive.
They wouldn't.
Well, that's what he said.
Oh, okay.
England won the toss and they chose to receive. In which case, something went badly wrong in the planning. So anyway, the people listening will be able to clarify that. He's hitting the research.
I'll try and figure that out.
Okay.
But because Squidge Rugby has done a really good analysis of the half-time. The semi-final start by England. And if you watch that, you'll see England playing through the phases. Ben Youngs doesn't look up once as he's doing it, because he knows what's coming next. He runs to the ruck and passes it.
And he just knows the person who's going to be there.
And there are different passes, so it's not like he's running and just doing the same thing. He's running and doing different things, so he knows. Phase 1 is this, phase 2 is this, phase 3 is that. Right. Because it is that well engineered. Plotted out. So you've got so that now coaches can do that off a set piece at the beginning of a game.
Right.
They can't do that during the rest of the game or off a kick that stays in field that you run back.
Because
everything's moved around a bit. Yeah. So if you're playing England, the thing you receive the ball, do not kick the ball out. You keep it in field, and you put a chase on, because that doesn't let them structure themselves and get themselves in to a set structure. And also, after 30 minutes, if you're asking a player, okay, remember these 5 plays in that order, it's just too much. There's too much going on. They won't remember it. But at the beginning of the game, that's the one opportunity a coach can effectively play chess.
Now, remember here as well, here's just a simple contrast we didn't talk about in that 40-minute analysis, was the receipt of kickoffs and kicking off. So every time South Africa kicked off, and because they were ticking over with penalties, there were quite a few kickoffs to England. Their chasers almost invariably got to the ball carrier inside the person who caught the ball inside the England 22, tackled them low. So this is Colby, mainly this is Colby doing the chasing. And for all his small size, hit that ball carrier around the knees and put them on the ground inside the 22 or close to the 22, right? And of course that again doesn't allow momentum to grow and grow and grow and get great position for clearing kicks, right? Although there was some under pressure, there were some good clearing kicks from the England players. Contrast that with England continually kicked off to where Dwayne Vermeulen was. And Dwayne Vermeulen would come trucking up, right? And barring one occasion where England tackled him really well, put pressure on the breakdown, won a penalty, right? Barring that one occasion, they kept on kicking to him. And he kept on trucking it up and smashing the oncoming tackler, right? And providing huge momentum. And they didn't change, right? And this would not have been a surprise to them because he did it against Wales as well. Wales kept on kicking to him and he trucked it up. And in fact, he broke one of the Welsh players who tried to tackle him sort of 30 minutes in or whenever it was. One of the Welsh, I think it was Welsh prop, right? Came off with broken ribs or something. Yep. He put his shoulder into him and broke his ribs when that Welsh player came to tackle him. So there was just a contrast in the efficiency and everything that happened there. But it was across a range of he's trying to check on the coin toss. On the coin toss. He's trying to, it's disturbing him now. But so I'll cover. What's the word in broadcasting? Not vamp. It's a different kind of broadcast. It's a different. I'll pitter-patter here. So talking about the game itself, it's a proof that the game is still won in the forwards, right? It's very, very, very nice turning it up so you can hear. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, you see they win the toss. So he calls. So rugby over 100 years. Primarily, there's a couple of...
Wow, that's a surprise. Sorry,
so he's just found out that I wasn't talking through the top of my head. So over 100 years, there are very few occasions where rugby is not won by the team that has forward dominance, that has dominance at set phase play where the forwards make contact with each other, because that's the source of ball, right? And it's not only about whether you can run the ball, but it's also about whether you receive the ball to kick it in a dominant position. Where it might be not only about when you have the ball, but it's also got to do with when you're on defense. If your forward pack is dominant, it means that on defense, you're always stepping forward when it comes to tackling. Your defensive line is always moving forward instead of having to backpedal and then come forward. So across all these phases, you see that the team that has overwhelming forward dominance is almost invariably the team that's going to win the game. There are two exceptions to this that I can think of. 2 games in the last 4 years. One is a knockout game. I don't know if it was a quarterfinal or a semi-final. It might have been a quarterfinal. No, anyway, it was a game the Chiefs played against the Stormers in Cape Town, where in the first 10 minutes, the Stormers were just physically, absolutely dominating the collision points. And then an opportunity came, and it was like the Chiefs took out the rapier, just right, fighting somebody with broadsword, and they scored a whole bunch of tries, and they just finished it. The other one was the 57-0 that the Springboks were given at the sort of nadir of their tenure under Alistair Coetzee, And
this was in Albany, which is
It's
North Shore, which is the beachhead of a South African.
yes, so you must, there were all the South Africans. And I had a friend, that Paul was talking about, who played age group rugby, Border Bulldogs, and we think with Makazole Mapimpi. He was at that game, so it was a bad one to choose. But what happened there in the first 10 minutes, I'd maybe seldom seen such bossing of the forwards of New Zealand, right, in that first 10 minutes. But then they just broke out, and they scored the tries, and they almost ripped the heart of the forwards out. So by the end of the game, the New Zealand forwards were dominant, but the first period they weren't. So, but these are very rare exceptions, right? And England don't have the backline quicksilver skills that Chiefs backline had, with Tim Nana Williams, with Mackenzie, with Webber, with the whole
James Lowe,
James Lowe, with all of that.
It's Lowe anyway.
And again, New Zealand don't have what they had in that game. Bowden Barrett and a range of attacking Mackenzie and a range of attacking threats that could right. But these are very, very rare.
Yeah.
And so what happened here is, you had a team with overwhelming forward dominance. You had a very good defensive system and structure, because that's one of the big things that has changed from Alistair Coetzee to now Rassie Erasmus. Rassie has a lieutenant that has followed him through his career by the name of Jacques Nienaber, who is a physiotherapist by qualification, but has developed into a defensive specialist around the world. He's gone with him to, it was Munster, right?
Yep.
Munster, and worked on their defense. He was with him at the Cheetahs. He was with Rassie at the Stormers, and he has proven to be an expert on defensive systems.
Could he be the next head coach for South Africa?
There is some talk that could happen. I don't know. I don't know the character of the man. Some people are very good lieutenants.
Wayne Smith is a good example of that.
Yes.
Wasn't even though he is head coaching over in Japan, but yeah, he's an example of that.
He said, I preferred not to be. Some people are very good lieutenants. It might be that they don't like the limelight. It might be that they don't. Let's put it this way. I'm not saying that head coaches like the limelight. I think Eddie Jones certainly likes the limelight, right? And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but maybe they don't thrive in the limelight, and it's a detriment to them. But Nienaber. And then this is something. There's a whole bunch of stats that we didn't talk about in this game, and I very quickly want to point them out. The number of things that were overcome, patterns in World Rugby and World Cup Rugby that South Africa overcame. Nobody has ever won the Southern Hemisphere Rugby Championship, be that the Tri-Nations or the Rugby Championship, in the same season and gone on to win the World Cup.
Yep.
Number one, first time. Nobody has ever lost a game in the pool phases and won a World Cup. That's gone.
Yep.
Right? I'm trying to think of the other ones. South Africa had never scored a try in their previous games.
Yep.
Right.
Which is a damning indictment on them, but never mind.
Yes, but their previous... but to be fair, they did score a try in 95. But Derek Bevan was on the far side.
Disallowed. Yep.
And so he couldn't see it. He was in the in-goal area, in the right place, seeing them come in, and Ruben Kruger was driven over, scored a try behind where he was. And today they would have been absolutely awarded, and he was unsighted, and he went back to the penalty, and they kicked the penalty. So there was a try, to be fair, in 95. And I think there's a couple of other ones that I'm losing here that South Africa overcame previous patterns to do. But one of the things that is absolutely remarkable, and I wish I knew the name of I think it was a Guardian correspondent that wrote this, and he said it's one of the most remarkable stats in all of sport, that South Africa has played 3 finals, right?
Yep.
And has not conceded a try in any of them, right? And you are including playing against the breakout team of Jonah Loma.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So they come into these finals that they win with a defensive system that is really at the top of the game.
Yep.
Right? And why I say that at the top of the game, if you look across the whole tournament, even though they lost to the All Blacks. They have conceded over their 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 matches. I think they have conceded 6 tries.
Okay.
Right? It's either 6 or 7. So they are slightly under, somewhere around 1 try per game on average they concede, which is way ahead of anybody else. Mm-hmm. Right? So there's much to admire in this team, because not only do they have tremendous physicality and defense, they also have really, really good wings.
Yep.
And those wings showed their ability in scoring those tries. Mm-hmm. Right? So even the Mapimpi try, he set that up by the most wonderfully delicate chip at full speed.
Yeah, him and Am were fantastic. Am makes the break, he makes the chip, Am then does a fantastic no-look pass, which is brilliant, and then he scores. Yeah.
And then he scores. But without that, and that's a wing skill, the ability to, at speed, take it and delicately chip it into the space, right? And make the chance, if the bounce of the ball is right, that your team can do. So he created that. And then Cheslin Colby, his ability to finish. And Pieter-Steph Tutoy, by the way, what's not spoken of is the ball was given to him and he drew the tackler. He didn't just go into contact. He drew the tackler and fed Colby in space. And then his ability to skin. I've heard that Owen Farrell's still looking for Colby. Jeez. Right?
This is what I'm talking about. Humble winners. It's amazing. This.
I'm sorry. It's just so good. But
yeah, come on. Look,
they've got the finishes.
Honesty, if your winger can't step a fly half on the wing, they shouldn't be playing wing, right? So he excused it very well. But people who are trying to say this was some sort of amazing try, he has scored much better tries than that one.
Yes, he has scored better tries, but you want a wing that finishes.
Yeah.
And these are 2 par excellence finishes.
I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying people who are trying to big up that try as being so wonderful. It's a good try. Don't get me wrong, but it's not a wonderful try by any stretch.
Yeah. So these are both of these wingers. If you look at their strike rate, at almost a try per game, right? And actually, Mapimpi has a higher strike rate than a Colby, which is to be expected. He's a left wing, so you tend to get more ball there. And then Colby's ability to make yardage gains in heavy traffic, which is just extraordinary. These are 2 very, very special finishes. And what you saw play out is a blueprint of South African rugby going back into the last century, where they would have very dominant forwards that would subdue and penetrate, crush the opposition for 60 minutes, and then unleash skillful, fast backs. So South Africa didn't have ponderous backs in the past. They actually had players like Donny Gerber, Maniki Zru.
The only difference here is that the Mapimpi try came off a kick return, and the Cheslin Colby try came off a turnover. The ball still did go to die when it got to Delende. He did a lot of things very well, but one thing he does not do well is release backs.
No, he doesn't release backs.
Yeah, so that's the only difference between the old style and the new style.
But that pressure that England were running it out of their 22 late in the game, so that when the tremendous tackle was put in by, I think it was
no, I'm just making a point. You're saying that they subdue and then they spread wide. It wasn't really spreading wide this time.
Well, it was. Let's put it this way: it was fed to Mapimpi through marks as well. That
he's a ball playing,
yes. And so it went there, and maybe it wouldn't have gone there if it had been Delende, right? Let's be honest. And again, was involved when that ball was turned over. Under pressure got it and flipped it to Pieter-Steph, right? Who then drew and whatever. So, but those positions, the gaps that were there, the tiredness, the losing of the ball, were created by overwhelming strangulation pressure, right? All credit to South Africa. I really do hope that whoever comes in as the new coach takes this now to the next level, because the overall blueprint is not a blueprint for long-term success against the All Blacks.
Correct. And we are now going to step on to the next subject, because we've already talked over. We've run out of time.
But it's so good.
It's fine.
So
whatever.
Good.
Quick update. A story that we're keeping track of is Sanzar and the potential of Japan joining the Rugby Championship. The no news out of that meeting from 2 weeks ago, but from what I hear on the grapevine, it's nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen quickly. It's going to be years before they come in. A bit like what happened with Argentina after they came second in the Rugby World Cup. It took another 4 years to get into the championship.
Which is an indictment.
It's wrong.
It's absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I think that these bodies that run World Rugby, that they couldn't arrange a piss up in a brewery, right?
Yep.
Because they have these wonderful opportunities that open up to them, and everything seems to be about why they can't do something rather than how they can.
Yep.
Right. And if they went out and they were a bit more open, a bit more public, and they said, look, we have these issues, we want to get them in, let's have some suggestions. You send us some emails. Let's tap in let's do something, right? Show some kind of initiative to look for solutions. Involve people outside of rugby. Get something how can we do this? But there just seems to be a narrative of focusing on the problems and the things that can't be done rather than looking at, and an opportunity was missed with Argentina.
Yep.
With their generational team that they had at that time.
And they're missing an opportunity
now. It's not just about how good the players are. It's about the whole feeling within Japan to engage with rugby. Right?
It's wrong. On to the awards, then World Rugby Awards. Let's start. We're going to go from bottom to top, actually, running through So first off, the Vernon Poe Award for Distinguished Service. Wow. This is
I think that's Vernon Pugh. Anyway.
Yep, I'm dyslexic. Sorry, folks. My pronunciations are bad. Bernard Lapossette, or whatever his name is, the French... Frenchman, former World Rugby chairman.
Yeah.
He's getting recognised for his work. It's kind of leadership and visionary. Okay, whatever. Yeah. This really is an award for the boys. So congratulations, Bernard. But hey, old boys in your blazers, pat each other on the back. Well done. The award for character. Now this is a really interesting one.
I didn't hear this.
To Kamiyashi in Japan. Are you aware of what Kamiyashi is?
No.
It's a town. So they've given the character award to a town that was devastated by the earthquake and tsunami back in 2011. Right. Lost over 1,000 lives in the town that year, unfortunately. But the idea of hosting the Rugby World Cup came from that town as part of its recovery, awesome. Which is fantastic.
Awesome. I mean, there's sometimes World Rugby gets things right. But that is terrific.
Yep.
That is terrific.
Not only that, but also it's where the Namibian and Canadian teams were supposed to play. The game was cancelled, and they helped with the clean-up effort. So obviously all of that going on there.
So they really got hammered. It's just not just then, but also with the typhoon. So yeah. So that's awesome. Well done. Kudos. Well done to World Rugby. That's fantastic.
So that was an interesting one. A good one. The IRPA, so the International Rugby Players Association, a special merit award goes to Jamie Heaslip, who obviously the ex-Ireland captain and player.
Lions player.
5 British and Irish Lions, apparently. Yep.
Yeah.
So he's done a lot of work with anti-doping and working with different age grades and talking with people about that kind of stuff.
About the dangers of doping. Okay.
So good on him. The try of the year. IRPA try of the year was TJ Piranara's try against Namibia.
Magnificent.
Which is great. I mean, you've got to remember, TJ Piranara was playing fly half at that point, not scrum half.
Yeah.
Brad Weber does a beautiful behind-the-back pass to him. And then there's the diving in the corner.
And then there's still the ridiculous offload that Piranara makes himself.
Before then.
And then still gets up. And then the incredible finish, which is a winger would be proud of, right? So, just audacious skills. And kudos to Namibia. Because in the past, a try that the All Blacks scored against Namibia would not be considered worthy of winning try of the year.
True. Yep.
But it's an indicator of the improvement in the quality of play of these second-tier nations that is a team that is very much seen as second-tier could provide the opposition and the tackling, and they put the All Blacks all the way through that try under tremendous pressure. And that's what required that offloads. And so kudos to Namibia for being part of that.
So fantastic. That one.
Worthy winner.
Worthy winner, that's yes. World Rugby Referee Award goes to Wayne Barnes, who's retiring after this tournament. 90 internationals. He's refereed more than anyone else previously. A bit like with players, there is an element of that there's more games now to referee.
Right.
But even so, still 90 internationals. That's pretty good going.
And, we all make mistakes. We all get things wrong. And he could so easily have shut up shop and disappeared for the hills.
We've seen other referees get hounded out of the game for those kind of mistakes.
Yes, and he took huge flack, right? Albeit that it was from a country on the other side of the world. It's still, it's still the time of social media. It was the early days of that. There's still people writing about it and pointing. And his mistake is there on YouTube forever to see. But he didn't buckle. He recognized he'd made a mistake, and he recognized, and he kept going, and he became. And this is an indicator of how good a referee is, and also the quality of the man to not give up and reach a stage where New Zealand was actually quite happy to see him refereeing a game that they were playing.
Let's be blunt here. He became considered the best referee in the world.
I prefer Nigel Owens. You don't, but he certainly is up there in the best. Where all the teams were happy because he knew what he was doing and he had good control.
Now, on that note, just talking about referees and things, obviously one of the issues or one of the problems for referees is they're never allowed to referee their own country. Nigel Owens is going to be refereeing Wales in a couple of weekends' time
against Barbarian.
Yes,
I think that's
nice
superb,
yep.
And then that's so the Barbarians, right? Who obviously the Barbarians had to sign off on that, right? Yes. But that is so the Barbarians. It's so in the ethos of the game and the spirit of
so I think it would have been nice if Wayne Barnes me us do an England Barbarians game. I think that would be nice. But so anyway, some of those things that maybe those sort of things
is he retiring from all refereeing or just international? I'll ask you the best questions, man.
You do. I have no idea.
Well,
to be honest.
If he is still refereeing professional rugby, then he may get this similar opportunity in another season.
Women's Sevens Player of the Year, Ruby Tui from New Zealand. Congratulations. Not sure how much we can. And Jerry Tawai for Fiji was the men's Sevens Player of the Year.
Yeah, he had a tremendous impact. Those of you who've watched the Sevens games, I enjoy watching women's Sevens tremendously. I enjoy the All Black Sevens ladies team tremendously. Black Fern Sevens, yeah. And Ruby Tui has tremendous impact both on attack and devastating on defense for that team. And Jerry Tuwai, his impact in any one game, you're just waiting for him to do something. It doesn't necessarily have to be to score, but for him to create something for his finishers. And he kind of is the linchpin for that team. He's very, very special. Also deserved winner.
Yep. Young Breakthrough Player of the Year, Romain Ntamak for France. Yep. Yeah. Totally. Definitely. Looking at the other nominees, they weren't first choice starters for their countries. He is. Yeah. So, totally deserves that. Wonderful player there.
Huge potential there.
Yes.
He's very raw still. When you see him, he's very raw. He's playing instinctually, playing on instinct, whatever. And there's lots of room to polish there, I'd love to see somebody like Dan Carter mentor him, and about controlling the game and giving direction to the forwards and all, the real headspace part of playing.
If he went to Toulon, he could have Johnny Wilkinson mentoring him.
Yeah.
Anyway, but he's not. He's at Toulouse.
I don't know if I would put him with Johnny Wilkinson. Johnny Wilkinson is a very regimented player, great player, huge respect for him. But I don't know if that's the right, because there's something still mercurial about Romain Ntamak. There's something romantic that harkens back to his dad, right, in the way that he plays. I would rather see somebody who incorporated that into their game like Carter did. Right? Well, I think. But anyway, that's a point of discussion.
I think you're being maybe a little bit harsh on Johnny Wilkinson there.
I have huge respect for Johnny Wilkinson from a character, integrity, hard work perspective.
But he was someone who deliberately worked on his weaknesses. Now, he never got to be a running something, but he would try and do the same drills as Jason Robinson to try and improve his foot speed.
Yeah,
so
good on him.
I can see him working with somebody like that.
It's a huge. I have huge respect for him.
World Rugby Coach of the Year. Now, a couple of things here.
Mm-hmm.
First off, I think it was wrong that Esteban Menezes, who was the head coach of Uruguay, didn't get a nomination here.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The nominated people like, particularly the Irish head coach, Schmidt. I think he's had a particularly poor year this year. And now I get it.
It's a nostalgia.
Yes, exactly. He's retiring and all that kind of stuff. It was a nostalgia nomination. Now, Esteban Menezes may have been a bit of a controversial one because of the way that the Uruguay team smashed up a bar on their way out of Japan.
Did they?
Ripped up a teddy bear.
I did not know that story. That's so sad.
So yes.
That's so rugby. It's so amateur rugby. It is. All right. I shouldn't be laughing. This is not a good thing. Don't do this at home, folks. After 4 years of giving and then just giving themselves and then they just go large.
It went large and went a bit too large. So A, I think he should have got nomination. And B, I think Jamie Joseph perhaps would have been because should have received this rather than Rassie.
You mean ahead of Rassie? Oh, I don't know. No, I don't know about that. Simply because Rassie's reward, that award is not just about this year. It's a 2-year award. It's the journey that he took these Springbok players on over 2 years. And yes, Jamie Joseph is certainly a big push for it, but it's very hard to take. He's taken his team from where it was to one loss a whole year.
My problem, okay, is that what's the point in having a team and a coach award when they basically pretty much every year give it to the same people? It's been
you've got a point, Paul. I mean, there is an argument to be made for Jamie Joseph.
It's been given 19 years. Sorry, it's been given out 19 times. Only 3 times has it ever been given to a different person than the person who coaches the team of the year. And I fully believe that South Africa deserve the team of the year one. Don't get me wrong. I think that would be recognition of what Rassie's done. And I think this would have been better off to Jamie Joseph.
Yeah, it's a tough one that now that you phrase it like that. Without the coach of the year, do you become the team of the year? Which is also, you know what I mean? It's. There's an argument to be made for Japan as team of the year, right?
But as you say, South Africa lost 1 game all year. They lost trying to say they're not the team of the year, having lost 1 game all year. They've won the Rugby Championship. They've won the Rugby World Cup. Hasn't been done before. Now, admittedly, Japan have never made it to the knockout stage of the Rugby World Cup before, but other Tier 2 countries have. Right? Fiji haven't. So
the overall story of South Africa, means that they are the team of the year.
Yep.
But without Rassie, if you don't have somebody who's the caliber of coach of the year, do they become the team of the year? Right.
Yep.
So there is room for Jamie Joseph. There's a strong argument there, but for me, the thing that clinches it for Rassie is the trophy ceremony. Right. So,
I understand, but so many coaches. Well, every coach I know does that.
Yes, but he did it. Right?
Yep.
Right? And so many coaches do that, and maybe that's what makes them good coaches. But this is the World Cup trophy, right? This is a moment where many people would want to have the limelight. And for those of you who didn't notice, there was a slight delay in the awarding of the trophy because Siya Kolisi was looking for Rassie Erasmus.
Well, he found him and tried to persuade him to come to the front.
So he couldn't find him, and Rassie was hiding behind all the players on that podium. And he went round and he held up the ceremony to go and speak to him and say to him, come. He wanted him to hold up the trophy with Siya Kolisi. So together hold it, so I suppose, where's it? So each one would then, sort of hold it up like this. And Rassie refused. He was no. And he stayed at the back. Right, yeah.
So that I can do.
Yeah. So instead of that, turn it around there. So it would kind of like that, right? And Rassie refused, right? He said, no, you go and do it. Now, that's great for any coach to do, but the importance for South Africa and the whole of the African continent that a black captain held that trophy up by himself, right?
Yep.
The symbolism of that moment, right? And we as human beings, symbolism is a huge part of our psyche and our development. The importance of that he recognized, right? And so easy for his personal satisfaction to go up and do it, but he saw the bigger picture, right? And for me, that's the moment where he clinches the Coach of the Year.
Okay, we'll disagree on this one. I think James Jones has got it. We've already talked about it or mentioned it, but South Africa were Team of the Year. Congratulations. Then on to the two big ones. The Women's Player of the Year was Emily Scarrett from England.
I don't know much about it.
Neither do I really, I'll be honest. Okay. She's played
well
sevens,
done,
come back to
Emily
15s,
Scarrett.
and she's gone and won that.
Good on you.
And
they weren't the dominant team in women's 15, so that speaks highly of her ability to not be the dominant team in that game, in that field. I mean, because New Zealand staged a major revival in the 15s game.
Yeah, that's true. But I want to say, I think England, from memory, I'm sorry if I got this one wrong, I think they won the Women's Six Nations this year.
Okay.
And then, then New Zealand won. New Zealand won, but they lost one game on the way to the
championship
Super Series
in San Diego.
In San Diego,
okay.
From memory.
Good on you, Emily.
Then, and finally, Pieter-Steph was the World Rugby Player of the Year. And someone we've talked about a lot of times, and you've talked about a lot of times, converted front row, converted lock to
over 2
6.
seasons, yeah.
To blindside, or 7 in South African terminology.
In South Africa, by the way, 7 is blindside flank, yeah.
Yeah. Unlike the rest of the world. Just get with the program, South Africa.
It's the correct choice. Right? You disagree?
In all honesty, it's just a number on a back. Who cares?
It's just
a number on a back.
No, I'm talking about the award.
Oh, sorry, I'm thinking about the...
I'm not saying the 7 is... Sorry, my bad. I didn't communicate well. I think the awarding of the trophy to Pieter-Steph, do you think that's the...
Yep, absolutely happy with that one. Yep,
yeah.
Very happy.
I think that Cheslin Colby is a close run thing. Mm-hmm. And maybe if Colby had played in the quarterfinal and scored a try, right, I think he might have had a shout at it. But still, I would have given it to Pieter-Steph du Toit. So the reason being is that this is the reason why they moved him to 7 and let him develop there is because he's got the most incredible engine. Mm-hmm. For a 2 meter plus tall man of, I don't know, somewhere between 115, 120 kilograms, who goes and goes and goes and is still chasing and pressurizing and sprinting at the end of 80 minutes.
Look,
it's tremendous.
At the end of the day, games are won by forwards. He should definitely have it. The only thing that I would say is that if Cheslin Colby got it, the symbolism of a little guy amongst giants would have been cool. But I don't think. Yeah, I think Pieter-Steph du Toit is the right choice. I just think the symbolism of that would have been
tremendous,
amusing.
And don't be surprised if Colby wins it sometime down the line, because I think what may be happening is, Willie Leroux is, I think 30 now, 30, 31, somewhere around there. And I think going forward in the next cycle, you will see Colby playing at fullback, which will give him even more space and make him even more dangerous, right? Because he does have a good pass, can get better, right? But he does have a good pass, and he plays his Pro 14 player of the season, this last completed season, right? Playing at fullback for his French club. So you can imagine he takes a lot of high balls in European rugby, both in Pro 14 and in the...
Says the guy who is self-confessed and never watches any European rugby. So
but you know what I mean. It's played in poor conditions. There'll be a lot of kicking on the fullback, right? A lot of up and unders, right? Employed, but I know this much, right? There's a reason why I call it a Gary Owen is because the Gary Owen club invented it, right, and developed it. So he's obviously he's not going to win that at fullback if he's not good under the high ball.
Yep,
he's not going to be the player of the entire league if he's not good under the high ball. So. And if he doesn't have a good kick at fullback, he's not going to win that thing. So He may well be moved as an attacking option into fullback, which will allow two very high-class strike wingers, so Spoo and Kosi and Mapimpi. So, yeah, don't be surprised if he does win World Rugby Player of the Year within the next 4 years.
Don't be surprised if another small player doesn't win it before him, though. David McKenzie, when he comes back from injury, if he's still stepping, there will be another small guy who could do it, especially if he gets allowed to just play 15 or just play 10 and stops getting messed around with.
Yeah, and by the way, he won that award with his father's anterior cruciate ligament.
Sorry?
Pieter-Steph du Toit
Yes.
won that award with his father's anterior cruciate ligament in Pieter-Steph du Toit's knee.
Oh, you mean he's had operation? Okay.
So prior to the 2015 World Cup, in March maybe, he snapped his ACL. And that was the end of his World Cup dream for 2015. He was bitterly disappointed. He went to the surgeon and he went with his father. So his father went to support him. And in the meeting with the surgeon said to him, yeah, look, you're not going to make it. We'll do the operation in about 4 weeks. Why 4 weeks? Because it normally takes that amount of time before we get a donor ACL. You've got to find the right person, the right donor. It's somebody dies and they donate or whatever. And in that meeting, unprompted, his father said, what if you use mine?
So he
saved.
now or not?
He saved. I don't know if they then did it. I don't know the background, the rest of the story, but I do know that they very quickly did that operation. His father donated his own ACL to his son, and his son made the September World Cup in 2015 because his father donated his own thing. So I think that's his own ACL. I think it's just a tremendous, tremendous story by the father's love, seeing his son devastated, and 4 years later, having shifted position and running on that ACL, his son wins the World Cup, maybe not 2015, but wins in 2019 and is World Rugby Player of the Year. So I just want to applaud you, Papa du Toit.
Yeah, thanks for all the pressure on all those dads now. I have to step up to that. Yeah. Jeez, really?
That's awesome dadding right there.
Awesome dadding, yeah. Got your kidney ready for your son?
If he needs it, ask his mother. No, sorry, no, that's a joke.
Oh, dear me. So, lovely story to finish on, guys, and thank you very much. We have overrun by half an hour.
It's the World Cup.
I really did try to speed him up.
Africa.
He can sing us out.
Cheers, everybody. It's been great to do the World Cup with you. We'll have one more chat about World Rugby.
Yeah, next week we'll have actually maybe not next week. We'll see. We'll schedule in one Tuesday where we'll be talking about the World Rugby structures, and then we'll put John away in a box because as you've heard, he doesn't watch European rugby. So we'll get him back out of the box come Super Rugby. So we'll have a few months without him where
unless I need to sleep.
About European rugby. So thank you, everybody. This show will go on every Tuesday, 52 weeks a year.